All right. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to all the prospective applicants who are watching this video. We are four of the current ID fellows at Hopkins. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves in a moment, but we are talking today about research during ID fellowship. So just to start things off with brief introductions on who we all are, who our mentors are, and what type of research we've been pursuing in fellowship. And I can kick things off. So my name is Chelsea Maudlin. I am a third year soon to be graduating fellow. My research time in fellowship has been defined by the opportunity to pursue additional training in global health ethics, and I'm completing a postdoc fellowship in bioethics at the Berman Institute here at Hopkins. And so I study equity and fairness in international research collaborations with a particular emphasis on HIV research partnerships between high income and low middle income countries. My mentors are Larry Chang, who is a global HIV implementation scientist in the ID division, Joe Ali, who's a bioethicist at the Berman Institute, and Professor Nelson Sowakambo, who is an international leader in HIV and in building bioethics capacity in East Africa, and he's based at Makerere University in Uganda. So that's me, and I'm going to hand things off to Lucy next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy Lee, one of the first-year fellows, still in the early stages, but I'm interested in invasive fungal infections and planning on looking at their epidemiology, including identifying novel risk factors for acquisition of invasive fungal infections, as well as potentially progression to severe disease, and also in understanding antifungal resistance patterns. I'm working with a group of research mentors, so this includes like Robin Avery, Nate Perpelong, and Christine Durand, who are in transplant oncology ID here, and Sean Zhang, who runs the mycology lab here. And I'll hand this off then to Juan.
Thanks, Lucy. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan, and I'm a current second-year ID fellow. I think I can start a little bit off by briefly explaining my background. So I'm originally from South Korea, grew up in Seoul, where I attended medical school there. During my medical school years, I developed a strong interest in what is called global health. Which was part of my motivation to move to the U.S. for the residency. And I did my residency at Jacobi at Albert Einstein, New York City, during which time I worked at Johanna Daly's lab studying malaria immunology. And after residency, I did some clinical work as a hospitalist for 4 years, and during that period, I simultaneously studied for and received a Master's of Science degree in epidemiology from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So here at Hopkins, I've been working with my mentors, David Dowdy from the School of Public Health and Emily Kendall from the ID division on studies in Uganda, mainly evaluating TB diagnostic and preventive measures. So, and I'm happy to share today what my process and experience has been at Hopkins. And with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Derek.
Thanks, Juan. Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Hareza. I'm a second-year Hopkins fellow in ID. I'm originally from Chicago. I did my residency at the University of Chicago, and I went to med school at Einstein in the Bronx in New York. My mentors are Pranita Tama and Sarah Cosgrove. My research involves gram-negative bacterial resistance, specifically optimal treatment and outcomes in ESBL infections. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for going through that. And I was hoping to probe a little bit more on mentorship. And Lucy, as the one of us in this group who's probably closest to the process, could you tell us a little bit about what you went through in trying to find a mentor in fellowship?
Sure. So really the process, I think, starts even before you officially begin fellowship. They set up a meeting with a few members of our fellowship research committee, usually by Zoom, so they can get a better sense of your research interests. And it's really fine at this point to still be undecided. And then they just help set up meetings with anyone who you express interest in speaking with, as well as suggestions that they might have for potential mentors or individuals who can help you decide what you want to do, either even before you start or during the orientation week. And then during the first year of fellowship, you'll have time to meet with additional folks or have further discussions with specific mentor or mentors. And this can continue for as long as you need to find a good fit for you. And usually you can squeeze in time even on inpatient consult rotations. People make accommodations so that you can try to get figure out your second and third year fellowship research project.
Great, thanks. And I'm going to pick on Juan next and just give a little bit of perspective, kind of looking back now as a second year, almost third year. How was the process for you, and how has it kind of changed now that you're in your research years?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I did my residency outside of Baltimore and did not have extensive research experience before coming here. So when I joined the fellowship, I knew I wanted to do something related to quote unquote global health research, but had not decided on which microbes and which country like I want to base my study on, things like that. And I was thinking about maybe malaria, tuberculosis, viral hepatitis, HIV. There are like so many options that looked attractive to me. So I think I really took the advantage of the structure of the program, where fellows are given enough opportunities to meet with and have one-to-one conversation with multiple potential mentors, including those from the division and those who are not from the division but within Johns Hopkins umbrella. So I think when I was first year trying to figure that out, I think I met probably more than 10, almost like 20 or so faculty over the course of 1 year to discuss my research interests and identify potential mentors and co-mentors. And I have to say it was really nice to be able to have those one-to-one, 1 hour long meetings with different well-established researchers throughout the institution and seek career advice. That's been a great experience for me. And after the fellow identified the mentors, I think program still does an amazing job to make sure the fellows are meeting expectation and advancing appropriately as they go into the research year. What I found to be of great help was that there is a fellowship research guidance committee, which consists of program leadership, faculty, and about 10 or so research faculty, senior faculty, where they meet with each fellow every 6 months and go over their work and their progress and provide helpful feedback advice to the fellow as well as to their mentors, which I found it to be a really nice thing to have in the fellowship programs. Yeah, I think I spoke a little bit too long, so I'm gonna pause over there.
Oh, no worries. And just to wrap up the discussion on mentorship, I think a common theme for ID fellows is that we end up having research mentors that span multiple disciplines or that come from other institutes or other schools, either within Hopkins or outside of Hopkins. And Derek, I know you do some work with our stewardship group and with the CDC Epicenter. So was curious to hear kind of how it's been navigating kind of receiving mentorship and training from different fields and different parts of the system.
Yeah, for sure. So my main mentor is actually Pranita Tama is pediatric ID. And the process there, it's actually been pretty seamless. Adult ID, pediatric ID interact pretty closely at Hopkins. While we all attend Tuesday morning conferences, we hear each other's cases. So yes, you would not be limited to just the adult ID division here when it comes to a great mentorship. But as you said, my mentors also have other roles. They're both actually directors of antibiotic stewardship, so I have opportunities to get involved in their meetings and their initiatives, since obviously antibiotic stewardship and antimicrobial resistance have overlap. And Sarah Cosgrove is also heavily involved in Hopkins being a CDC epicenter site. And that opens up a ton of opportunities in research and epidemiology, surveillance, infection control. So it's very useful being able to join these types of ongoing research efforts while meeting other researchers at Hopkins, but also nationally.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just add, I think of this as one of the areas that really defined my research experience was the ability to seek mentorship from different schools and locations that I think is actively encouraged in the department. I know all 4 of the fellows in my year received mentorship from at least the ID division and have one other mentor at one other part of Hopkins. And I personally never be able to like really accomplish what I wanted to without drawing from experts in different fields. And so I think you end up learning this very specific skill set in navigating a multidisciplinary or even a multi-institutional mentorship team, kind of figuring out like who you need to talk to about which types of problems or which types of barriers or expertise is helpful in any context, but also learning how to communicate across disciplines was really important for me to learn, and I wouldn't necessarily have if I hadn't had the chance to have mentorship from ID and bioethics and kind of global health more generally. And so I think building mentorship teams really helps facilitate those skill sets and has led to kind of exploring a lot of support and funding opportunities that go beyond the School of Medicine. So I was actually able to, for example, visit my mentor in Uganda for six weeks this year while I was writing my K Award application. And between that experience and to access to centers at Hopkins that I used for my grant, for example, the Center of Global Health and the Center for Qualitative Research and the Center for Community in Global Health and Infectious Diseases, which is different than the Center for Global Health, it really made kind of putting together this interdisciplinary grant much easier than it would have been otherwise. So that was kind of my 2 cents there. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I seem to be picking on Lucy a lot, but I'm going to pick on you again and see whether you can describe your experience with kind of getting a foothold on what you wanted to do for research during your first year when you're really busy with clinical time and a lot of other obligations.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, there's no expectation that you make significant research progress in the first year since everyone understands that we're so busy clinically. So I think the emphasis is appropriately on like trying to figure out a mentor or mentors, and then maybe seeing what things can be set up in advance that have those kind of really annoying long wait times. And for me and some of my co-fellows, those are things that are like, submitting an IRB, which might have multiple rounds of revision, but doesn't require a lot of like active time on any given day, figuring out who actually has what data sets or samples, getting a sense of other research resources. Like I'm doing a consultation with our BEAD core, which is a biostats resource, things that will set you up for next year, but nothing that requires a lot of time commitment. I think other folks who work with a more traditional like research group or lab go to occasional lab meetings just to get a sense of what everyone's doing and whether you would be able to collaborate with other people in that group. And then potentially reaching out to start collaborations for the next year, like introducing yourself to international collaborators. Also nothing that requires a lot of active time, but it's obviously great to start building those types of relationships. So I think those are generally what people try to do, at least in the first year.
Yeah, well, still a lot by the end of the year. Nice, even if you are super busy with all your clinical obligations. And moving on to second year, so Derek and Juan, can you kind of describe that transition from your clinical first year to a research-based second year? And I know both of you are on the T32 and doing GTPCI, so could you talk a little bit about what that process and how that's helped your research develop?
Yeah, sure. So I can start off since I did do the GTPCI. So first year and second year, they're quite different. As Lucy mentioned, first year is mostly clinical, while second year is much more flexible. You still have the weekly half-day clinic in HIV as your kind of clinical component, and usually you cover about 8 weekends and about 8 weeks of Jeopardy backup coverage during the whole year. But otherwise, your time is set aside for your career development and your research. I used my second year to obtain a master's in health sciences degree at the School of Public Health. In the program we call the Graduate Training Programs in Clinical Investigation, which is that GTPCI. And it's funded by the T32 grant. This teaches you biostats, epidemiology, trial design, grant writing, and other subjects depending on your choice of electives. I knew very little about these subjects before I started GTPCI, but in the span of about 9 months it takes to complete the program, I'm now independently analyzing my own data. So you do make like significant progress over time. And it's also nice because the program coincides pretty well with the timing of your own research so that you can apply the skills that you learn in real time.
Yes, and just to add on to what Derek has mentioned, and what I did was a little bit different than Derek because I debated a lot whether or not to pursue a full degree through GTPCI because I came here with the master's degree that was pretty fresh, and I was hoping to avoid having to take a lot of duplicate classes. So I sought a lot of I sought to discuss that with my mentors and several different faculty for advice, and decided not to do GTPCI. And then instead, what I did was to take free credits at the School of Public Health. And all fellows are given up to 16 credits, free credits, where they can take any courses at School of Public Health or at the School of Medicine. So I took the advantage of it, and I have to say it was really nice to be back at school and be a student again. I felt old and young at the same time. And I love it. And another aspect of the program I have to mention is that our program is very front-loaded with a lot of clinical work during the first year, which really frees up a lot of time during the second and third year of training so that it can be dedicated to research. And program is fully funded for 3 years, so you don't really need to worry about at all to secure your funding to continue training for the third year. And for those who are interested in studying TB or HIV, there is a weekly K Club that I've been participating. It's run by TRAC, which stands for Tuberculosis Research Advanced Center, which is and the CFAR. So TRAC is like CFAR equivalent type of entity in TB. So both TRAC and CFAR runs a K Club together, and where people who are planning to write Ks, that includes fellows, postdoc, and junior faculty, meet weekly every week to share ideas and provide feedback to each other's grant draft and seek mentoring from other senior faculty. So which I found really a great support that we have at Hopkins through the fellowship program. So I think, really the program is really well structured to prepare the fellows to transition to junior research faculty. And I think like higher than 90% K grant success rate just speaks to itself. I know Chelsea, you're the third year who's a little bit more closer to the transition process. So I'm gonna pick on you. Do you have any other additional comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, sure. So I'm very close to the K process as somebody who just submitted this past March, and I'm trying to use that as my transition to faculty. So a lot of fellows, especially at Hopkins, I think end up staying here for research faculty positions. And so the transition pathway is very well established and kind of very well worn at this point. Most, I would say, as you mentioned, kind of go the K pathway through one of the NIH programs, but in recent years, we've had a few fellows who actually got K equivalent grants at other institutions like the Borough Welcome Fund, or have gotten Ks, but have gotten them set up with a mentorship team at another institution. So even though they trained at Hopkins, they get a K and they go on to another university. That said, I think the division has listened to feedback from fellows as well, that obviously not everyone wants to be research faculty. And so there's been a big effort, especially over the past 2 years or so, to bring in a lot more speakers, interactions with ID physicians who are not necessarily in academia, but work in areas of industry or predominantly clinically based, just to kind of make sure that we're exposed to other career possibilities as well before kind of deciding whether or not this research faculty pathway is what you ultimately want to pursue. And for those who do go the K route, as mentioned, kind of the lead up to submitting is a fairly drawn out process. If you apply, you spend a lot of your third year getting that application ready. And in addition to the TRAC and CFAR groups that Juan mentioned, there's also a lot of support within the division itself. So you actually submit your research aims to our division director about 6 months before your grant goes in, and she sends it out to usually about between 6 and 10 established ID faculty who have NIH grants, and they all supply you with a lot of feedback over ways to improve your specific aims or how to make it come across to a group of physicians at the NIH who are going to read it very critically in the same way they do. So there's not only kind of external support for the K development process, but there's also internal support. And then there's also a lot of support within Hopkins to kind of help you bridge from when your K gets submitted to when it gets funded to when you actually get hired on as research faculty. So they don't leave you hanging at any point of the process. And there's kind of a lot of well-established built-in mechanisms to kind of get you from the end of fellowship to that whatever position you want to be at as you start your career. All right, that is just about everything we had planned to ask. Do you guys have anything in addition you wanted to add? No? All right, well, we'll wrap up here, but thank you again to Derek, Juan, and Lucy for their time, and for any applicants that are watching, best of luck with interview season. Our email addresses are on the ID website, so please don't hesitate to reach out with questions. Thanks, everyone.